약간 언제 가서 안녕모바 방탕 남기진배 야 뭐고도 페이지에 지게 야 바시 말람 되니 남들람 기에지 녀모바 방탕다 안되네 안지가 주게가 냠는 제발라 되네 태바친 비슈 냠는 데려다 동안이기나 내가 냠는 제발 되네 냠는 제발이나 안에 상교고 방토에도 뉴월에서 가상한데 뒤거야 쉬바로.
Good morning. Last night we looked at the complete stages of the path that a bodhisattva engages in. First progressing through the lower paths, then attaining the path of seeing in an unobstructed path and abandoning the acquired afflictions, and progressing further, abandoning the innate afflictions together with their seeds, and eventually the stains too. And moreover, we also looked at, very briefly, at the tantric presentation, with the Mahayana having the two divisions of Sutra and Tantra being distinguished by being a path of, or a technique of exceptional speed.
안 동유도 별로야 냠네 제바디 녀려야 냠디 야고치로야 냠네 제바 쪼고레스 디 냠네 제네 안디 제려야 아는 지게 소소기에 나게 냠네 제게 되바다 뜀바다 딩이 유바 여바이나 단디네 나게 냠네 제고레스지 송고로와.
In the context of Tantra, it was mentioned that one needs to train one's mind well in the foundation of love and compassion, which comes about in dependence on the generation of definite emergence, as well as the correct view. Having trained one's mind well like this, one also needs to have a powerful aspiration to engage in the practices of Tantra.
심전 탐지기 된 제발 심전의 코에 동안을 저고도 다디 조위게 탑람 약쇼데다 산지고 방 토고도 세다 산지고 방디다 토바이나 심전 탐지기 된 지게 개침보다 수신도 제투야래샤 제가 산지고 방 마톱는데 난 심지게 된 개침보 제투야 깔래가 고래샤 대자 산지고 방 토고도 세지 지난다 산지고 방 토바 토고고 인자 다 저기 너희 돈에 냠는 제바에는 다 산요고마 토발이 옆에 균리부 쉬고 고도 지난 균리부 쉬고 여도 당에 되네게 산요고마 균리부 고 되디갑라 셈좀 빠도 매바지 균리부 동아 쉬고 용고도 제사 당에 산요고마 교보교보 톱지 아니 셈전되게 동아되게 교보교보 세투와 제고 제사 산요고마 지상아 균리부 산요고마 토야 균리부 고바에 셈전되게 균리부 강한 용고도 제가 다 강한데도 교보세고도 교보세봐라 니 산조고방 교보토고도 다디 산조고방 교보토야라 탑람지 가르둘레네 땡아게 냠네 제네 산조고방 교보토토고도 디인상에 나게 냠네 제 인세데 다 삼로로지 된신고래 승로하다.
To generate the aspiration to practice Tantra, the practitioner will reflect, will have generated the wish to be of true or worthwhile benefit to others, wanting to give others what they long for, a state freed of suffering. And in order to do so, the practitioner will have an aspiration to become a Buddha, the most skilled of guides, having come to understand the great benefits a Buddha has in being able to guide others perfectly in accordance with their own individual personalities. Wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of others, the practitioner will compare the Sutra and Tantra paths, recognizing that the Sutra path takes an immense period of time, and that has the consequence that the practitioner will delay the attainment of spiritual development, or their spiritual development will be relatively slow, and therefore the attainment of the final goal of enlightenment will be delayed. This has the consequence of their ability to quickly benefit others being delayed. Whereas if the practitioner applies themselves to the tantric paths, they can quickly spiritually develop, quickly attain enlightenment, and thereby be able to benefit others in the most meaningful ways as a Buddha. So with a wish to, as quickly as possible, become a Buddha for the sake of others, the practitioner generates the determination to practice Tantra.
Anda dene ginza da dene nga nyamlin cheba de la je ha de an cheba de le da nga nyamlin che se de la rimba ro ma sa na shi yo re se ro da gyu de shi je gyu da nga ju gi ne je gyu ju gyu na ju gi na ju la me gyu se de gyu de shi na ne da gyu de dang bo sum je gyu de ju gi na ju gyu gi nyamlin che ne san yu ko ba tho wa da de lam ne nyamlin che san yu ko ba tho wa ni de sun 교가 톱투고래서네 아니 기도 오마승이 남냠을 제발할 때네 항상 요거만 교가 톱투고래서 이 교가 톱투비 김제 가래 람나 다 되네기 기도 오마 숨기 갑네 냠는 제게 동이 또베 르림바다 탑탑되게 사바한자다 뉴브체레스 사바스 뉴브체와레스 지도 뉴브체와인자 디냠는 제발할 때네 제발이나 상요고만 교가 톱투고래서 하시 숨으로
In practicing Tantra, or within the Tantra, there are 4 classes, 4 divisions: action, performance, yoga, and highest yoga Tantra. Of these 4 divisions, the first 3 are considered the lower Tantras, that those first 3 being action, performance, and yoga Tantra, with highest yoga Tantra being the higher Tantra. But even when practicing the lower Tantras, one will progress towards enlightenment much more quickly than merely relying on the sutra practices. And this is because both of the quality of the mind that realizes emptiness, or the subtlety of the mind that realizes emptiness, as well as the skillful means by which merit is accumulated. These 2 together make the Tantras so much more powerful when compared to the sutra practice or sutra paths.
Na dele jang ane lam nyamlin jeba dina sanyo ko ba thoya ke ta nye di nye sho de khare san da ka so na ju la me gyu se na ju la me gyu nyamlin jeba ina an dele gyu de o mo sum nyamlin jeba le dele jang gyo ga thot ku res ka sne na ju la me gyu nyamlin jeba le dene sanyo ko ba de da cheji lu chi na le 안 톱투에게 누버요레스 디가르스네 저거 톱투에 가르스는데 람디 동이 또베 람 냠는 이름바 람디 신도네 사포차고레스 빼면서 사보스데 빼 누버 치셔다 냠는 람 냠는 제기 누버디 달라 알라메네 시비게 람 이름바텔레 누버디 숙체와지 매바레 매바한데 숙체셔딘다 니 안에 가서 델라테네 산요고 바토야디 교화 톱투그레세 디로와다.
The practices of highest yoga tantra are the fastest of all, because only the practices of highest yoga tantra that can lead to the attainment of enlightenment within a single lifetime. Therefore, there is no faster technique than that of highest yoga tantra. And this is because it is the profoundest of paths to cultivate within oneself. The profoundest, or which has the meaning of being the most powerful of paths that one can cultivate within oneself.
Na dini zada nga lamige lam nyamlen jeba tela ne rimba ma sone nga ju dangbo gerim gi nyamles na an zorim gi nyamlen sa de gerim nyamlen je sa zorim gi nyamlen je sa rimba ni le gore dang ju bine de lu ne sheban dangbo cholam jolam thonglam komlam miloblam sa de lam rimba nga shi goro ba da dini nga lamige da de na ju lamige ka so de Lama gu xie yong de na gar song yong de gar son de cholang jolam di ki xie go mara ta gar son dang bo gerim sa de xie ro de ne zoram sa de nyam na ji ba si di xie go ro song go ro ba.
As we heard extensively last night, the sutra paths have there are 5 paths in the sutra trainings. In the context of highest yoga tantra, rather than talking about paths, the focus is on the 2 stages. namely the generation stage and the completion stage.
And that me that zorum yamnen she do didn't delia and jigang shimbar nga dang tru da dinic so yore pene jikar sore and Luen said, Ngawin said, Luen Ngawe Semi, and Gulu Vesa Sonjuk said, Lucine, Jimba Juxon, Jayungore, Kashi Jimbanga Son, in other Dundala Cabayomara, just Chazan. Luen Ngawe Semi, Gulu Vesa Vesel Sonjuk. So
as mentioned, the sutra trainings are presented in accordance with 5 parts. Highest Yoga Tantra is presented in accordance with 2 levels, that of the generation stage and the completion stage. The completion stage, this can be presented, this is presented with 5 or 6 divisions. And the 6-fold division would be that of physical isolation, verbal isolation, mental isolation, illusory body, clear light, and union. So again, those 6, the first 3 relating to isolation of physical, verbal, and mental, the 4th being the illusory body, the 5th being the clear light, and the 6th being union.
And that the Niki Yamlin Jimbati, and that Shindune Savares, the Neza Delatina San Yakoba to Tubna, and the Sechi Lucilia San Yakoba to Ores, on those Shin that Chisnada, the Shi do you Lulin Yamlin Chevana Gashan, Damia Suno Sobadi, source of the Uniwishu, there was and Uniwishu Chagmurwa, and then Judio almost from the Deva, Delaya, and Uniwudio Washaware. That the Langala making Yamlin Chabana, Sosuki, Jumba inada, Yamlin Jumba inada, Sechi Lucinalaya, and Yamlin San Yokoban talk to you, nobody lam Yesapke Yobari, Dineza, that Nudo, your wood San Yokoban talk to Baza, and in Cabaret did your SS to Smorwa.
There is no technique to training that is more profound or powerful than that of highest Yoga Tantra, and therefore the attainment of enlightenment is so rapid. The sutra path, as we see presented in the text, takes up to 3 countless eons. The lower tantras are much faster than that, but it's only highest Yoga Tantra that can lead to the attainment of enlightenment within a single lifetime, within a single body.
That in my share, Tenia and Yarmchige and the Jiki, Umbigi, Tavi, Namsha, Tene Res and Manguchik Tus in the Tongi, Tawa, Tombanyo Comda, Javachedam, and Deniki, Dusun Savene, Tenemada, Zugia, Dorduchin area, Tenia Sunshaki, Tombani, Sunshaki, Dida, Nangazukomna, Canis Comgureta, Com, Yamlenchetan, Combi, Jimbatima, Tenma, Dordusungua.
Returning to the text, His Holiness now at the bottom of page 26 presents the final outline, the conclusion of the text, where it presents the stages of meditation to engage in order to cultivate, to nurture one's understanding of emptiness, in order to gain realization, transformative realization of the wisdom realizing emptiness.
The Ginelia Shevade Tony Dinity, don't some of the Stangore, Satatushin, that Tursum, Turbadang, and the Sambiki, Duhendima, Dusin, Tursum Jetaro Sungorwa. That Denma, Tursum Jesavi Jelia, the Gombe Rimba, Canas Gomgorelen, Dus Gomgore, Sadi, Disungorwa, Denma.
One starts with hearing as well as reflecting, and this then is followed by committed meditation. Here we have the stages for meditation.
tawa gomba driba ponchir yimbe sen tongpa ni tobe tawa gomya de driba ponchir yimbe ane so gya chenbo zho gwes deyang cha cawa so yanla dunbi chogi gwane ane so gyu du che shin goba che sen.
Looking at the final paragraph on page 26, I will now briefly present how to internalize the view of emptiness. Meditation on the view of emptiness is done for the sake of abandoning obstructions. Therefore, the support of a vast collection of merits is required.
Tawa gomba driba pongwe chirin biyase. Dachi zang tongyo tobe tawa gomba di kharachina gomgo resi ne ngana chuki nyomo ba driba pongya chido gombo korwa asire. Driba tawa gomba driba pongwe chirin biyase.
As mentioned in the first part of the second sentence, the purpose of meditation on the view of emptiness is to abandon obstructions or impediments.
당한 중에 따와 동방이 도배 따와 보면 주버 봉외 체리 인자 동방이 도배 따와의 공고래 동방이 도배 따와 공발라 동방이는 또 고고로 와서 디네 인자 동방이 도배 따와 또 발라양 아주 쇠남 가서랑 아주리아 쇠남 침부 고고래서 지산다 디네기 따와 곰제 동방이 또냐 또 발라양 쇠남 침부 고고래 디네 또네 곰배기 냠내지네 야 야려 탈신바 좋아들래 마서로 쇠남 침부 싸고 쇠남 고고래서 지산데 쇠남 메나 저기 동방인 도배 따와 또 투에 갈래 하보래 지산다 또바인 동이 야니 야고 공부도 줘야 돼 갈래 하보래 진짜 녀랑 아주 가르쳐 버서는 쇠남 그 소사고래 해서 소사고래 제 근데 소 개첨부 조고배 지산 동이 도배 따와 길에 깨와라 동이 또 받아야 소 개첨부 사고래 지산다 동이 도배 따와 또 천에 얘네 뭐 고면도 공부하려야 하는 소개침부고 대인자 소개침부 조고배 시대 소개침부 동의도 배다와 개발은 얘는 소개침부 사고 그래서 손남 침부 사고 그래서
Again, the purpose for reflecting on emptiness, on the view of reality, is to be able to abandon completely all obstructions. So with this understanding, one gives rise to the wish, the determination to strive to come to realize emptiness. But to realize emptiness is no mean feat. It is difficult. It requires, therefore, two general components. Firstly, a basis or a foundation of an immense amount of merit. And secondly, the continued accumulation of knowledge and integrated through reflection on the view of emptiness. And as one strives to initially realize emptiness, one will do so on a basis of extensive merit. And when one has realized emptiness, in order to perfect that realization, to progress and make one's realization ever more profound, one will continue to accumulate immense amounts of merits.
지 초월 계신 분 사마도 외에는 동반이 홀 삼다 외에 도시네 동반이 삼다 하는 강섬질이야 안 동반이 마도제 아니 지 체다로 홍야게 있냐가 체다 딱다다 체다 저러봐 동반이 삼다도 되네게 수능임 마다와제 아니 체다로 홍야 야 지게 되네게 제바지네야 딱다로 홍도야 지산다 딱다다 체다로나 동인도 또 듣고 말 지네기 아니 용시바레서 올다 지네자 되네게데 동이 또 발에 튕긴 가르가르 참고 받을 차상직 마사바이나 아니 튕긴 가시 지어 봐시 가시 참면에 차상 참면에 야고 좀 두고 말해서 그러다 벤디로 하다 간주기 모자로 지내 다가로와 모자지 야고 줘와라 모자기 잘라 차상 튕긴 차상 참고 마도 지 가시 참지 콜로 숨미지 콜로 찍디 야보면에 조투이 말와 인디나시 차상지 참고야 콜로 차상 참배나 나로 눈매나 야지 조투 말와 내 로면에 조투 말 차상 튕긴 모자 콜로 로와라 튕긴 야고 차상 가르가르고 차상 상네 내 모자 땅배나 난 야고 조투 거와지 지나디 모자 튕긴 차상 마사나 가시상 가시 마사나 유년 마사는 줘야 말 가시 참배나 차상 참배나 용 말에 你难心啊，东北人都别打我，结果举来结果虽然没有错的，结钱不少我的结钱不的，还是都送多。
His Holiness starts out by mentioning the need to accumulate merit. And this is very important. It's not something to be glossed over or ignored. Because in order to achieve desired result, one requires all the all the favorable circumstances that are necessary. For example, if one wants to travel somewhere by car, if all the parts of the car are amongst all the parts of the car, even if a single important part is lacking, for example, if one tire is flat, it will not be able to travel. Or if one has insufficient petrol, one will not arrive at one's desired destination. Likewise here, if one wants to realize emptiness, and not only merely realize emptiness, but develop that realization ever further to the point of perfection, all the required favorable circumstances need to be accumulated. Here we understand this as referring to the need for extensive merit. Because if insufficient merit is accumulated, not only will one struggle to realize emptiness, but one may well come to an incorrect understanding of emptiness. And therefore, one may fall into either of the extremes of nihilism or of existence. So this is a grave danger. And to ensure that to safeguard against from falling into either of the extremes of nihilism or existence, one needs to have the solid foundation of extensive merit guiding one's spiritual development.
두치신 거 같이 시대다 소사야래야 간에 자월스네 아는 아주 양라 뒤니 거네 사나 아니 디 야고래 되네 아니 사야래야 뉴버레 쳐와다 거 같이 보여래 해서 뉴버 쳐와요래 거 같이 보여래 해서 지사다 가서는 양라 뒤세디 차차와나 아니 쳐버푸와 차차와 쳐버푸와 아니 소소기 디바 샤바 아니 개발의 지수 이라바 아니 추유콜로 고어 제스네 소와 대비야 and then young and let me do and the temple shoes so said and then Odusine so Devia didn't give on why said give on watch here give on why Odusine so sour as this didn't chevena be so the catchimo side and been new chimbuchak yunguri.
His Holiness explicitly mentions a technique to accumulate vast stores of merit. Further, to amass such through the rite of the 7 branches, such as prostrations, encompasses much and has great purpose. So His Holiness is encouraging us to engage in the 7 limb practice, or the 7 branches, of namely prostrations, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting for teachings and for the Lamas to remain, as well as the dedication of merit. And he specifically states that vast stores of merit will be created, and therefore there is great purpose to engaging in the 7 limb practice. Continuing, with regard to the field for amassing the collection of merit, it is permissible to do whatever suits one's own inclinations, either directing your mind to the actual 3 jewels in general, or towards any particular object of refuge that is visualized before oneself.
Gabu Namul Lama Idam Sud Denigi Cabra de Yubaina, Denitonia, Jera Gasu give you Gayaro, Chicken and Benesosura, Najume Nechebaina, Chigranga Lama Town, and the Chinanjume Lango Yemesat, Lan Najuma Satapje, Delian, Langranga Lama Dango Yeme Tony, Ondusin Chinajigi said. The Nijig Yamnejavan mix it, then sound to sound La Cherapa, China, and Rangi Lama. Dango Yeme sometimes do Satam Tigo session, Jera to give you Gayaro, I succeeded, Najobainada, Chisan Dubainada, Geshe in a Deshoina, Denny sat up chair, Rangi, Meba, Dinti Sosugi, Namune Delia, Gomshit and Webok, Chick, Gomche, Garian, Dicene, Yahweh Reset, Karshina Tigo Reset in the Cavayo Marege.
When one engages in the collection of merit, in one's meditation, one will visualize before oneself one's merit, visualize before oneself a merit field, a virtuous field in relation to which vast stores of merit will be accumulated. And here, independent on one's own or the practitioner's own individual disposition and inclination, the merit field may contain the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, and Sangha jewel. So this is what we see at the beginning. It is permissible to do whatever suits one's own inclinations, either directing your mind to the three jewels in general, or in particular, to a particular object of refuge, for example, one's Lama, or visualizing one's Yidam, whether Yamantaka, Gyurasamaja, or Heruka, or whomever, and seeing them as individual, one's Yidam as indivisible in nature from one's Lama. And this then can be the principal figure in one's merit field. And with this visualized before oneself, feeling their presence, aware of their presence, engage in acts to accumulate merit, to aid one's realization of emptiness.
Da Tongi Doyake, Tongi le Jebache, Tongi Doyake, Tushin, and Yamen Jebi Kabla, Nadambo, Nangazakas Tirwa, Taku Tunga de let it draw, Wudu Koali Martin, the Taminus and Big some Diada. Dine Jiran Jibu Maya, Simjan Tamje, Dungada, the Koyu Dunga, the Taku, Digi, the Tempachi Kuduas, the Inzang is Simjan Tamji. Koyu Dunga le Dorje Asani Salako, wins and be some diada. The name is Simja Tamsan Yokoban Tobrachi in Sebigida, Dushin Dabon as a Kulon Masona, and the Deniki Jaju Sem some Dajam, Jaju Sem some da. The name some Dale dinner Gazelle Dushin and Azuki, Jik Duschine, and that Tony Yamlen Jag, and Dus Dugor, what do you think? Society, Jessaya was doing, Dennis, and the nigger dinner, and this Kulonti Pachu. Dinezada, Simja Damju Sanyokoba Tobala, Nyomoba Mapamba Inada, and the Sanyokoba Top 2 or marriages at the Nyomoba Pango Ware, the Nyomombala, Nyomoba Nyimbo, Tomba said, don't want you to be Sherakum watches at the Tomba Yimato and Jiminoas and Begida, Tomba Chicken, Dotuba chickens and Big D, and I, Dogins and Big Nichaba chickens and Big Summer Nane, Dinner to do Chene, that D Doeg Dandalia, and I could use Delia gave you set up chair, and he conjures also gave you set up in Delia Anji, Yaladimukone, Chasawada, Chivopua, Sopa, the nigger sort of Jenny, the Nidushine, Chasanchi, Savi Jela, Shine, and DJ Savi Jela, the Nea Tombani, Jabajale, Nico, that Tombani Jeva, Jimajin, Yelia, Dushine, some Tongo in Sarodan.
Here His Holiness presents how we start our meditation. So we first ensure we're sitting on a comfortable seat and in a comfortable meditation posture. And then we start to cultivate our motivation to engage in this meditation. We first reflect on the sufferings of samsara, regenerating our determination to gain freedom from all the sufferings of samsara. Thereafter, we recognize that it's not only myself who's bound in the prison of suffering that is samsara, but so too are all kind mother beings. And they are all just like me, yearning for happiness, wanting to experience an existence completely freed of suffering and pain. Therefore, it would be inappropriate for me to only strive to better my own situation, but I need to develop myself in order to be of real benefit to others, benefit in the most important of ways. Therefore, I need to spiritually develop in order to be able to benefit others, and there's no more spiritually developed being than a Buddha. Therefore, for the sake of benefiting others, I must become a Buddha. But in order to become a Buddha, I have to abandon the afflictions, all these obstructions that limit my ability to develop good qualities within myself and thereby be able to be of benefit to others. I must attain enlightenment. And to do so, I need to engage in a meditation, an analytical meditation on the nature of reality. Now, with a motivation generated, which is the second step. The first was to visualize before oneself one's marriage field of either the three jewels or one's own Lama. One is now ready for the third step, which is to engage in the accumulation of merit through engaging in the seven-limb practice of prostrations, offerings, and so forth.
Mushi Johnson sa deshi da den dire deshi nganzu dus deje demba da dawa gyulage de sodap de yana dimbe ko ne choga de hejora demba chini ba de da de samda di deshi shesarwa dire dinegi da Johnson ni da ma gomdu ganes komgore sa de den ma sungore de shuyarida.
And the verse concludes, or the paragraph concludes. Then, after you have appealed to the refuges for help in generating the view of emptiness in your continuum, the way to conduct the actual meditation session is as follows. So in this paragraph, His Holiness presents the three preliminaries. Generate one's visualization, feeling the presence of one's field of merit. Then, reflect on definite emergence, bodhicitta, developing the determination to meditate on emptiness. Cultivate then merit through the seven-limb prayers to engage in the meditation on emptiness. So those are the three steps of preliminaries. Now one engages in the actual meditation on emptiness.
Gasa dame na chugi dame se ni yu bena ne tangbo gasa dame di komba na to sam tangba na di to ye le la yo res komba na i komla yo re kare se ne chi shi gasa se de gasa korong juge ba chi ha ko ye di le la yo re ko pung pung a bo gang ro chi pa da sha ba yin ba da ha ko le la yo re di ne sa gasa ge tian do dong ba ni le che ba na to ye le la yo re se de.
Page 27 with the first bullet point. It is taught that it is easier to start with meditating, or let's just first to say, so I have just a couple of words to add in this section, but I've changed the person from we to you, or from our to your. So as I read it, I'll read it with the changes, but it doesn't make any much difference. Just in the first line though, I'll be adding one word. Okay, now to read the first bullet point. It is taught that it is easier to start with meditating on the crucial object of the selflessness of persons. Of the two types of selflessness, there's the selflessness of persons and phenomena, and it is taught that it is easier to recognize the self of persons and therefore to meditate on the selflessness of persons rather than that of phenomena is easier to start with.
Bendigo da gasa din kom se de sosora kom de sosora rang den samdang re so da jina da dang bo juan da da ngi taw kom nyam bi kom bo ran ni la jira shi do nang su dang jina da dang bo ka de samdang sa da da ngi taw kom bi da ngi tong yu kom gi sam bi ge nga zo sam lo chi ko yo de ka bla de ne samda de da ngi tong yu kom gu se de nga sa ran ni la 그러니까 nga서 데 가르치 난구도 선비게디 당보 디삼당고레셈 니 다다 따오 곰 냠비 곰바보 세데다 니 동니 곰기 세데세디 다 공부 소소라랑 공부 소소라와 지상 하 세디 랑교로야 간스 난기도 라니라 지라시도 낭수로 세데 간스 난기도 선배데 당보디 삼당고 제고 해제 지상 하 세두 진 소소게 삼단에 나 세디 소소게 로레바 이 돈이 공기시거든 아니 가디가 간스 도와 선배게 소소리야 로라 낭수디 삼당고 그래 세제 당보도 삼당고 해제
The first sentence identifies that amongst the two crucial objects of selflessness, that of selflessness of persons is where one should start. Then it continues with the second sentence. Therefore, you should ascertain well how the meditator appears to your mind when thinking, now I'm meditating on the view of emptiness. The first point then the second sentence makes is that having recognized the need to meditate on the selflessness of persons, one starts with one's own self, not that of someone else. So how does oneself appear to one's mind? Here, one is sitting with the purpose of engaging in the meditation on emptiness and is now embarking on this meditation. So I, as the meditator, how am I appearing? This then is the first point of the meditation. How does one's own sense of self appear to the mind?
당한 저기 앞에 독세 디바도 제자다 가브리엘이야 앞에 기우도 샘비 삼로백 샘려야 가나시 우주예비 갑라 당아디 로려야 가나시 샤구도 제자데 나소 가나시도 대대갑수 나려야 진다 루이파 진다데 신비갑데 가나시 인기도 사다 다양 앞에 나르시 운여송 앞에 강아도 나르 동아 십제기도 샘비징 데네게 삼다데 갑라 ngade kan lo la kan snang do lue xian da la kan xin do sa di ni de sam da da ji da da jiang jing ang zu ge ga du da ga me be den ge le le yue be gap la sim ji ba bo le le yue be gap la lo de kan su nga se na da kan su xian da kan su du on du xian da dang bo nga se de lo la na da da xian da da xin jin da de kan su yong du sim be du xian de sim ju xie go le se.
In the next sentence, along with ascertaining how the I appears to the mind when the I experiences pleasure or pain, determining well the way you are clinging to the I. So the first point of the meditation was, how am I appearing right now? How is my sense of self appearing right now? Then the second point or guide is to recall times when emotion arose, emotions of pleasure or pain. And here, especially when starting out, it's easier to recall times when strong emotions of pleasure or strong emotions of pain arose. How was my sense of I then? So this then is the second point, to see how when one recalls an incident or an instance where strong pleasure arose or strong pain arose, how was my sense of self then? How was it appearing? As well as then the last part of the sentence, determining well the way you are clinging to the I, or in the past tense, the way you were clinging to the I at that time.
Tadi nganzo nyele junya dike samdang chugurade ben nyele ya nganzo ji be soso ge jala la basa nyemba ro shu ya go ji bene ji ji towa na bele ga so shu junya jinguro wa de ne ji ga so shu shi le ji tin ga ne mi shu dang we ro jinguro wa ga ne soso ge be de ne ga wa sa de shu chemu shu jo ro wa de ne ka bla nga sa de lo la kan nang du lo ge kan jing du se be jin ha de nyama de sam da ji. 다양한 Gabriel yang 중에 가르쳐 Mishandai Nala Nesson said, Nalpe Kanga Junson said, young Halia, Maki, Duma, Shu, the Kabla, Nadi Canis Nangudu, Nitsin to the Canis to Sipegeta, that didn't answer that Denis Chebache, the Yamagit, the Nesal to Chebachi to Kab, Chebachi Chagorwa. The Nichebachi to Kabla, and then Anzukara Tungo, Nga said the big Nanzo Peg, Kawu Shu, Gasor Shu, Chile de Kabla, Nga said the Korom or Rangu when it. Sujilama Koronga, now to Vachilia, they shook Chimbu, the Zindu, shook Chimbu, Shembatla, then now on the Dara Res and Biggie, Shenduvachi Chagorova. She's not that Nasa, Dumak, Singala, Nursong, Happe, Jures, and Biggie, Denicaplia, Chingan, Nang to Kablan, Hadipe, Shan, Sujilama, the Corona, Rangun Nang, the Lodi Shensu, shook Chimbu, Jungo, she's that Deniki do Chevachin. Deniga Nash and how the Shuk Chimbu Shu, but Nang Sudia, Corombe, say Kalamato, Corom Win, and now the Baroshi, Denis Yungu, but Chago, Chiga, Hakoyagi, Cabarungo, what I didn't some time.
Sitting on a comfortable seat in a posture that is comfortable, having generated definite emergence and bodhicitta, and turned to one's objects of refuge, one's mind is likely to be quite a relaxed state. So therefore, at such a time, it may be a little difficult to see how emotion is, what emotion has arisen. So especially when starting out, it's good to recall events from the past, where strong emotion arose, where either something went the way we wanted, or we got something that we had longed for, and great joy arose. Perhaps we even crying with joy. And at that time, how did the I appear? How did what was my sense of clinging at the I? What was the way or the mode or the manner in which I was clinging to the I at that time? Also, think of a time when one experienced strong emotion on the negative side, where perhaps someone was harming one in some way, saying something or doing something, and therefore one had a strong negative emotional response. Recalling that, how does the I appear? How do I grasp at the I? What is the way of clinging, the manner of clinging? So here we're trying to generate an appearance, we're trying to become aware of how the I is appearing to the mind.
Lola Shen Sudan, Chirashi do Leopard, Chirashi Leopard, Nebig, Tones, Leopard Nebas, Chisa Leopard Nebala, do Sine Shimjuchi Kabla, Gadushu, Gawashu, Lidi Kablan, Ha, said Nangsu Diang, Hadin, Tsunai, Shalamado Koron, when you do the Na, Chilia, Shen Sudan, Shuk Chimbo, Madamado, Shandasha, Toya meeting. Ngadi single, etc. Design Shen Su Chimbo Chida, Nanang the Koran, Galama, Rang, Tuba, Nan, the Chida, Delipa Lu, Shimbe, the Shemba, the Shuk Chimbo, your body, not Mother Shanghai meeting it, Shuk Chimbo, your body, how to win the rather labor, Ganesh Nangu, Ganesh Singu recipe, to Shimji, Yahoo Shimji, labor and Neba, then Yahoo Hako to Hako, what is your Ganesh Nangdua. Nang the Gala, Zina Ganesh Singdua, Sempegidi, Leopard and Neba, as a Navy toxin, then the Yahoo Hako or Red and Put the Hako or Resident.
In the same sentence, in this last line, just determining well the way you are clinging to the I. Here, when one recalls past events where strong emotion arose, and we see, because even now, whilst recalling that, with the arisal of that emotion, see how the I appears and how we cling to the I, how we cling to it, or the manner in which we cling to it. So it's such, now we are generally relaxed. By recalling these past events, we can come to observe well or clearly the way the I appears and is clung to or grasped at.
That the Nigi be tone, that did you never the cars of the Lolia, not the Nanga, the Canis Nangu, Sebe Nangta, the Hakowache. That now the Louis Park and his single to be in the Hakowadilla, never said this order. Chisade, do she Shimji, Lola, and said, now the Kala, and said, Dalai Mato Korang, when you drooped by Nanguva, Nanguas, and Hakowache. Then now on Ashinda, Ringa Shemba Dieta, Dentigi do simply Shemba Zimbadi, never Hago Ches, never Hago Di Hago Hodes. Then maybe Tones, then how go on to dinner? Nade, you see Shirash, Shirash, Gondo Sheba Dar, Dakchi, said Cesada, Nadi, then is now on Ashinjik. Duke Mundus, can this your Javachi or said, Gondi Sheva said, Diniel Yang, Yamalia, Jigna said Nana, and the Jiki Pumbo, Matu Chashela, Matu, said, Diniel Yamangushi Sarava, Gondi Sheva said, Diniel Yang, Donil Jevachita Mangushera, Chesa, Nasiadi, Jevachi the Pumbola, Deba Pumbo, Pumbola Madubanga, Pumbo, the Zugi Pumbo and Aina, and Sugi Pumbodi, and then she do you, and then Nameva Chago Reves, Nayoro Sada. And then I get 70 and the Dungadi in Aina, and the Dungadi Meva Chai, Nameva Chai or Reves. Naduas. Then some Kibu Yubeka, some Kibudi, Naina, and Chige Kibu maybe a some Kibu Yoma, then I Yoma Reves, and I or was two channel Lula Nadi Kari image in Amichebache. Then the same Naloya. Same Trova that they negate to Chebache, then number Sheba, they do Chebache, do Chebache or Esaje. Na Chidar Yusu Chidashi, Gondo Sheba Darasade. Gondo Sheba nearly young as Mangushes on the Chebachina. They negate Chebachina, some Najin to do in Cheba that Nadi Nangsudi, some down Hakowache, Tishin to the Hakowache, Chesa Nangsu de Kalama, the Rangu now answer. The nigga now and I think I did the Gawado, Pumbet in the Due, Shebet in the Due, Soviet in the Due, Dushin, Jebache or the Essage, Dishan, Dashi days. Zinsu the Ra. Dog big Simba the late Shemba Sura. Dog big Simba the late Shemba Sura. The rare somebody, don't be rare somebody, Shemba, Zimba, or Shembas. The rare, Dagara rare somebody. Jiba Mares, Monsum Zimba de Shemba Lagomar, Monsum, Sama Lola, the Topa, Monsum Nero, Monsum U Zimba de Shemba Lagoma. Shemba said the Topa, don't be Dagara said. Ah, that is the Shemba said the Topa, don't be Shemba, said don't be Zimba, the Dagara rare somebody Zimba.
So thus far in the meditation, we're using skillful techniques to gain an appearance or to come to see how the I appears, as well as our way of clinging to it. So this is what we've done thus far. Then we come to the final sentence in this first bullet point. Based on that, as was explained above, you should investigate the way the I exists. So before, we looked at many different techniques to come to examine whether the I exists in the way that it appears or not. So thus far, we've tried to gain recognition of how the I appears and how it is clung to. Now we engage in the investigation to see if it exists in the way that it appears or not. Looking first within the physical aggregate. If the physical aggregate, the body, were the I, this body that we identify with so, what happens when we die? Does our sense of I disappear? Of course not. Well then what about in the mind? So we've recalled instances where strong suffering arose. So if that strong suffering, I am suffering, if that were the self, what happens when our suffering passes? Do I disappear? Of course not. And what about the instances that we've recalled where strong happiness arose? I am happy. What happened when the happiness passed? Did the I disappear? Of course not. And what about other consciousnesses, primary consciousnesses, subtler levels of consciousness? We investigate too, looking for the way that, having come to recognize the way the I appears and the way we cling to that, coming to recognize that the I is not being found there.
어데 당봉아 주기 제바 제단 두신의 동방이라 제바 제고리 제바 제다 두시고리 해서 나 디나신 주기 내 님이지리야 차르가지 제비나 양직 님이지 디네셔 다야 상이디와 있네 양직 동방이 제바 제레데 양아주 되세 디시쇼가 디시셔바나 야고시되 안데님 군노되기 봐 전유 군노서 삼 군노주 디네 양직 야라 듬벽거네 안 쳐봐 소사 안데네 양직도 신다 나세디 그러니까 로라야카스 난게도 나나카스 난게도 나와라지까지 도움도 어두 제바제다 도스네 제바제는 내내게 제바자 살지일 남상어 주기 동반 야고 돼야 말아 내내게 토네 야네 야도도 신네 안지 니네니래야 같이 제투네 근데 제 튼시 제투네 튼이 제투네 니메리라 살지 제베네 당한 주님의 다그 무뒤시 도신네 안지 삼당바이나 당고레식으로 와다
Thus far it's been presented. Firstly, the preliminaries to engage in before one engages in the meditation, cultivating a motivation, generating a visualization of one's merit field, and then engaging in the accumulation of merit. So those are the 3 steps of the preliminaries. Then one starts in the actual meditation. Having done the preliminaries, one engages in the actual meditation. And here techniques were presented on how to see how the I appears as well as how the I is apprehended. And then to investigate whether it exists in the way that it appears or not, whether this appearance is in accordance with reality or not, whether the mind is apprehending the I in the way that it exists or not. So meditation like this, to be effective, needs to be engaging repeatedly over a sustained period. Meditating just once or occasionally will not lead to a realization of emptiness. Rather, one needs to engage in this meditation repeatedly over a sustained period, preferably several times a day.
rinpe gonyon sabdo sonyue tsamne jeba na sida da du shinang an zuge jeba jide tsara jikje rinpa san rinpa tsara jikje nyi je du sim ka jeyo de kala ane kor sosol ki gowa sida duanda ha goya dang sosol ya nyamnyon ma son de sab yar ya zhuguri ese rinpe gonyon sabdo sonyue tsamne jeba na deni ki jeba jidu sosuki god 하고야 되니 수다 하고야 다 용화되기 봐 됐으 뉴바되기 봐 야야 주고리 해서 왔다 림베스도 고당 보지고 니바고 되네 균티지 무티네 곰비 곰여도 제바체도 안디네 하고 어디 딘사레 되네 신사레 선배게다 곧 고와 된다 하고야 다 용화리야 소소리야 셈나는 용화되기 봐 됐삽삽 주고리 해서 삽도 송위게 참나 제바나서
Just before I give Kenna's commentary, especially if one's seen older translations of the term lamrim, it used to be translated as the gradual stages to enlightenment, whereas for a long time now it's been rather translated as the graduated stages to enlightenment. So the reason for the confusion between gradual and graduated is because it is the same word in the title lamrim. This rim it means both, or can mean either successive or sequential stages, or slowly, gradual. So having said that, we change the first word in the second bullet point from gradual to rather successive. Successively or sequentially, your understanding and experience of the view of emptiness becomes ever more profound. So there is this progressive development of one's understanding, integration of the view of reality as one continues to make a sustained effort over a period of time.
아니게 차르지곰 당보곰들 하고 말하되 니바곰 숨바곰 되는도 셔도 되고 된다디 이제 고아디 파스 고아라는 하고야디 됐 이삽주고레스 하고야 삽주데 소수게 셈나래 용화디에 삽주고레스 참 되네 소에 참나 아내가 제바 제도 제바나 아내가 가서 하고 그래서네 ngargi nge nangsul shangewa de deta tene midu nyamba chung chita du chida dene ge jeba je deji ngadu du che jeba chide ka semlia nawa ne nga sa kangla ma rangwen ne du nawa se rangwa se nangsul kangla ma de wa ko ngwe ne dub de nawa di na shin ji nawa na shin ji tene midu a nyembe samlo chi dene ge dan nyowa dene ge ha ko chi ngure es tene midu sambe nyamba nyembe ge midu sambe samlo chi li ge je ba.
Engaging in this meditation once, twice, 3 times will not lead to much transformation, but nevertheless, one can be certain that in dependence on the knowledge one has accumulated and one's merit, slowly, integration and recognition of or understanding of reality will dawn within oneself. This, and then continuing with the second bullet point, gradually, your understanding and experience of the view of emptiness becomes ever more profound. And when you engage in analysis at that point, the thought will arise. The way the I previously appeared as being independent is absolutely non-existent. So here one comes to see ever more clearly that the way of appearing and the way of existing are not in accordance at all. Or in other words, the way the I appears is not how it exists at all.
다 동의로를 샤와리고 최고를 했을 때 동의디 난 세명에 봐 녀다 망에 디슈점이 용거래 세명에 봐 용말 때 당보 로를 동반이 나서 되니게 민도스 백님 최대다 강라마 랑원이 두베 마세 강라마 랑원이 두바 나와 나신 싸우기 민도 셈벨라이드다 되니게 동상치 냠바 중고 용거를 와서 동의디 난 거다.
Engaging in this meditation again and again, coming to recognize ever more that the way that I previously appeared as being independent is absolutely non-existent. Here, one can come to realize emptiness through the appearance of the pure, empty state. So at this point, one will not yet have given rise to a valid cognition, but one will come to understand emptiness. One will come to have an appearance of the pure, empty state.
And denige nayo de kapla di se denige nayo kapla negap chi kacha ka samye tongsang de dekar chi du sha de miji bi chom ches. Jida denige negap de la kala ma de ranga minu sem tongsang chi de kacha ka samye tongsang de sha yong ro. Delia 다 제바마 제바제 다랑 제 동상들 제지도 제지 공고를 해지래 동상들 제지도 샤데 미주바 조금제다 조금제 그랬더니 덴티기도 또 전에 제바제도 동상 리언도 된 다랑 제 삼다지 제지도 내죠 조금제 그래 해지래.
The text continues. At that time, you should set your mind single-pointedly for a period on just that pure empty state, which is the mere refutation of the object of negation, and then perform placement meditation without analysis. Here, when one engages in the meditation as outlined thus far, seeing as clearly as one can how the I appears, investigating to see if it exists in the way that it appears, and recognizing it does not. It is empty of existing in the way that one appears. Then to the extent that one recognizes that the I is empty of existing in the way that it appears, to that extent one comes to see the pure empty state. There, just rest, abide with that realization. Here one's engaging in placement meditation, where one's mind is placed on that realization. For now, analysis ceases. One just abides, rests with that realization.
those chine chebach in the Kalama Rangon to what Minu, Sempe, Yambiki, Tonsachi, sometimes Lady Kabla, Tangbo de Rangan to Similia, Nishu Masona, Kalaganzam Jorova, Tangbo chebach, Tonsachi, but Minua, Sempe, some lady, because similar Mason, Nishu Jorova. That Della teach to near the Bigabla, the negative Kazam Giglia, add to similar Manuba Church in the Louis in that part, Tonsa Pai. But you chun drag it, third drag Ungrace, third draw Ungrace. The 60 lawyer Marta, or the lawyer.
So just to be more precise, as a translator, where I've been using the word realize, it's more to be more precise would be to understand or to recognize emptiness. Now to come to Genla's commentary. Here, when one comes to recognize or understand emptiness, recognize the pure empty state, one abides with that single-pointedly, without distraction. But one's single-pointed concentration, though, will weaken, will lessen.
And Dinashire, and then Dini Demoro, the six hour, Tambo told has a bed, you similar young, shoot Chimbura, Junguro, bad it is it. And the Gazam Jilia Giliglis and has shoot Lurdra, Junguro, and Dinashi, Dongbani, the Donsa, the Tambo, and the Charo de Gabla, similar to Nubal Massa, Goro, shoot Chimbura, Chiavache, Denigate says you do Yambajane, do Shinda. Going on to Gasson, Dongbal maybe she near to Matuba, to your Marawa, just then let Tambo at the Dongbani, Semeng, but Timbushing Yemeban, then Lamsa, Giligation Ma, Nuba, Chukchung to or Drosigur water.
Because here the meditator has not achieved calm abiding, and certainly not in relation to the realization of emptiness. So therefore, when they come to gain and to see the pure empty state, they will hold it, abide with it, but their grip on this the pure empty state will lessen. The strength of the mind, the power of the mind will lessen. So this we can liken in our own life. If we see something that we find phenomenal for the first time, we are very engaged, but our interest lessens after a while. And then if we see it a few times, perhaps our interest will not be quite the same. Or if we hold something, we'll grasp onto it at first very tightly, but our hand will tire and our grip will lessen. So similarly, someone who hasn't yet attained calm abiding on emptiness, so too will their mental grip on the perception of the pure empty state will also lessen.
Denigi Semde Tongba Tonsan de Lea Zidu Nebi Gabla, Semde Shuk Churumba, Zindig Tonsan Zimbigi, Lodi Pa Zinda, the Pash Nupa Shuk Chun Jugana, Takarche or Elamna, Yangs, Lu Zinda, Junzi, Ludu Joana, Narshin, Lui, Insul, Jubigi, Jegum Ches. Cisnada, the city down Botus Loshandigra.
The fourth bullet point. When the way your mind is apprehending this pure empty state of the negation loosens slightly, then you should again perform analytical meditation, analyzing as before. Analyzing as before, and here I add something. Analyzing as before the way the mind actually exists. So I'll read that last bit again, because I've inserted something. Then you should again perform analytical meditation, analyzing as before the way the mind actually exists. Sorry?
I just had a question on the previous thing.
Do you?
Is it, you said analysing as before the way the mind exists. Aren't we meditating on the I at this stage?
So what I inserted was saying that we analyzing as before the way the mind actually exists, but what has been said thus far is that we're meditating on the I rather than the mind. No, you're right.
Lui is insus lolpa, Ganis Nangore, Nawa Nashin, Yinda Main Silda. Lui is that Lui Pa Jebaja said, Kuranga Jebolo, Chigoma. Jebaja Lord Rede, Yina Dada, Lui insus Lola, Nandu Gablanga, Ganis Nangores, Kala, the Rang window to Nangudu was. Dinawa Nashin Jigi, do a midu, Yinda Main said, or Jebaja said, the Jebaja Dirwa. Oh. Yeah.
So Seppel, you're quite right. So it is the self that is being investigated. So what would be more correct to say, but it's not exactly, I'm not matching it with the Tibetan, the way the self actually exists, or the I actually exists, would be the correct way to say it, not the mind. But
di lui is sai jeb shana kheba khaya ma lui yin zu be din ko Geshe ja da kan don da ji ba le lui pa de shi lo ji la nang yin de nga de kan san rang mun de be nang go de din na wa de lo de lui pa ani din na wa na shi ji du ye mi du che ba chi sa ji de la ya lo ni du wa lo le ya nang yin de ka bla kan san nang go se be lo na su di che ba ji go ma ba ko la lo de la nang yin de nga de kan san nang go se rang yin de be nang go re se de Di lui naso yin su se di sicure. Da lui fa jeba che se de, lui fa yin su jeba che la de la na wa na shi du ge mu de jeba che lo xian da jeba che lo ni du de. Nga se de lo la nang su nang de lo la nang su lo si chi che. De na wa na xin ji du ge mu de jeba che lo chi che le ni li go lo. Ci sa da de nga xin lui yin su jeba che la de lui yin su jeba se lui ane pa jeba je lui jeba ji ma chen lui je ji yo ma de lui jeba je la go yo ma ba lui jeba je de lo ge jeba je ma chen yo ma ba ji de lui yin zu jeba ji su lui de di jeba je lo de ki shi go ma di lo de nga de nang kan lo de ya kan is nang du se be nang go de rang ma ne tu ba nang go re she di na wa na shi ji re ma re se lui jeba je go re se di si su go de da.
Goodness says the way to understand it, it's easiest if you just drop, from what I said, the word the mind. So the way the I actually exists is the meaning. What it is referring to, though, because where I'm confused is the word mind is here, and the way it's written is why I'm confused. But Genla says then just drop that, because of the meaning is the way the self actually, or the I actually exists. That is what should be inserted. But and then Genla went on to say, because what is being investigated is where the self appears to the mind, but there is now, what we are present with is a mind that is doing that investigation. So, but just ignore mind and rather have then as the insert, the way the self actually exists. Okay?
Cisa de ji lu shu chu de jebe che go ra ka se ne lo di pa jin da de zhe ji de jiao hom che de le ba nu shun che de jebe che go re jebe che de kan chi go sen de jin ye ma she ba na xin lo li ya nga de kan neng go de se be na wa na xin ji da nga zo pong bo da she ba di de du kan de du she ba che de ane jebe che ne du xin che hom che go re du zi jebe che de jin ye ma na xin jebe che de din nga se ka ya me ba 念吧东上去你的东上呀东上的内容的是其实的东上的的两个结果是呢的东上的俩这就的一笔结婚结果的是都是呢结婚结是啊结婚结果的是
Looking at the same points, I'll read that first sentence again. When the way your mind is apprehending this pure empty state of the negation loosens slightly, then you should again perform analytical meditation, analyzing as before the way the I actually exists. So what His Holiness is stating is when one initially comes to perceive or comes to recognize the pure empty state, abide with that. And as soon as the apprehending mind, the observing mind, loosens, then one needs to regenerate that recognition or understanding of the pure empty state. So therefore one needs to analyze just like before. Same object, same technique.
Deni reme ge kyang se de ta jegom da jegom che deni ya dong sa sha de la ji do jegom che yang ba le de nu ba chung zhe de yang jegom che ne ya dong sa ji de se le ya se sha de le ya jegom che du shi ne ko jegom da jegom ni reme che go le se reme ge kyang ne lo la 유어 턴탑 직지 제신 진짜로 된티게 뚫어디야 니보 공부도 줘야기 아니 렐리아 탑시 제고를 해야지.
And this bullet point concludes, alternatively engaging in analytical and placement meditation in this manner serves as a means of transforming the mind. What His Holiness is saying here is we engage in analytical meditation. When you come to the conclusion, come to recognize the pure empty state, abide. And as soon as our mind that is abiding, that is resting on this recognition, loosens, then again engage in analysis. And when one again comes to recognize the pure empty state, abide. And whilst he only mentions one sequence, one should alternate like this again and again, continuing to alternate between an analytical and placement meditations many times. The fifth bullet point, when analyzing the I and a little understanding of it being empty arises, you should then analyze the mental and physical aggregates in dependence on which the I is imputed.
Rang when the troops are in the middle, some big, that's some loti, that Danish, Paget, Danish League, or then they lay out that dinner carjoson, then I did a thing to do that. Rang when the troops middle, some big, some of the Guaros, Mason Calacan, Oslevanza, that Pumbo sometime what is, just not Pumbo de la, that Ambo Pumbo de la Chewomcho, Chiba, the Jingana, Pumbola. The Pumbo di nga Lola, Nangsu de Canis Nangu Sempeke, Dambo Pumbo de Lola, not had some time. Nagala dinner, Dapi, Pumbo, meet the Jay, said Jay Quay, Pumbo, Nansu Lola, now you can Nangu not have some time. Then now on Ajin, the Pumbo di Dugue Midu say, Tientic on the Chepa Jay, Lucien Jay, and the Gazam Chile, Pumbo dia, or Kala Madua, now on Ajirang when the Mindo, Sempeke, don't such shaggy. Dinisha yon did it, the Niki don't sound delia, Johom jet, says you think Johom jet. Yan the Niki don't sound maybe Johom diba, Nuba shoe, Lodiba, Zindan shoe, Churun Drodu, Yan Pumbo delia, Digi, Jebache, Jehom jet. Yan Jehom jene, Yan Jig don't Pumbo don't sound the Lolia just lay on the Sharon, 양들에 조금째 디나신 대신간을 제바나 두시네 레머지네 조금나 지금 레머진도 지고 그래서시.
The first part of the meditation then was where one comes to recognize how the eye appears and then seeks it, looks for it to see if it exists in the way that it appears, coming to recognize that it is empty of existing in this way. Then one rests or pauses one's analytical meditation and rests with this understanding, abides with it. But as soon as one's grip of the object loosens, one engages again in analytical meditation. In this way, alternating between analytical and placement meditation on the eye. And when one has some confidence in the understanding that the eye absolutely does not exist in the way that it appears, then one can progress to the aggregates. So whilst one was initially seeking the eye, within the aggregates, the object of that one was seeking was the eye. Now one comes to see not how the eye appears to mind, but how the aggregates appear, and then one seeks out the aggregates to see if they exist in the way they appear or not. Here the process is the same. One comes to see how the objects, in this case the aggregates, appear to mind, and then engages in analysis, seeking them out, when recognizing that they do not exist in the way they appear, they are empty of existing in the way they appear, then one abides with that meditation. And as soon as the mind loosens, one once again engages in analysis, seeing firstly how the aggregates appear, then seeking them out, and when recognizing that they're empty of existing in the way they appear, one abides. So therefore, this second part of the meditation, where the object alone has changed, the process of the meditation, which is the alternating between analytical and placement, this is the same. So the process of meditation is the same, just the object has changed.
Anda delang se de phungbola mine cheba chetan dil so delang subung so ji dang khebar namshi yi phungbor cheba lekor cheba dinne ches je jidang a phungbola mine cheba che phungbo de la yang je ga su gi phungbo da ane namshi number shi phungbo se phungbo nga su cho phungbo nga yoro ba dina shi ji je de kable ande su gi phungbo de le je de de su phungbo de ga zo char lo le sha de wa cheba je de dum di go ro ba 안디 나신다 초와당 초위다 초월 제베네 야지 되서 셰바 라파인자 안 초월에 디두다 지게 되솔 삼담베네 되실라 디나신다 두신의 캐버도 남시 풍보들라서다 넘버 제베 풍보 또 넘버 시 풍보 남시 풍보 제바 레버리 제바데 네체 시도다 넘버 디 풍보를 제바 제들라양 풍보 나네 양 당보 넘버 시 풍보들 제바 제들 네 첨부를 개체에서 네체 개체에서 지당도 풍보를 제바지도 당부 속이 풍보다 초유 풍보다 안두시 풍보라서 받은 되네 넘버십 풍보들에 바제는 넘버십 바세도 로지세도 간스 난도 나와나시 넘버십 간스 두아세비게 제바제의 백기시 냥아 치셔들이에서.
And this bullet point concludes, it is particularly important to carefully analyze the aggregates of material forms, feeling, discrimination and compositional factors in general, and the aggregate of consciousness in particular. What is being emphasized here is one needs to investigate all the aggregates to see if they exist or firstly, how do they appear, and whether they exist in the way they appear or not. And our emphasis, whilst one needs to look at all 5 aggregates, our emphasis needs to be that of unconsciousness or primary consciousness, coming to recognize, like with the other aggregates, how it appears and whether it exists in the way that it appears or not. And there is particular benefit in investigating the aggregate of primary consciousness.
지난 넘버 쉐바라 딩고스면 되스칼레가라 차바인자 세상은 게치쇼디 단디 넘버 쉐바디 나네 간에 좀 제바체디 냥아 첨보레서 게치쇼디 디레서 디수 디로와 비김센 디리도와 ni che de just a number sheba di ten do number dina number sheba so de jida su da su ti yin zo lo le sha le zo le la wa de sheba che le de dina jin cho wa de che de dina de number sheba se de lo le to cha ga wa je zang zo number sheba di ten do je hom che da number sheba de gang la lo le na wa na che rang xin tu ba du mi de che ba che de ge che wa de se le de ne chen bu de se ge chen bu de se wo da de ne che se number sheba che ba che de se wo le.
What we have here in the translation, the first part of the sentence, it is particularly important to carefully analyze aggregates. So this part, particularly important to carefully analyze, this really relates specifically to the fifth aggregate, the aggregate of consciousness. So this should be rewritten. All 5 aggregates need to be carefully analyzed, but in particular, the aggregate of consciousness. So now to come to Geshe's commentary. Of the aggregates, the body is the easiest to recognize how it appears and to see whether it exists in the way that it appears or not. Our coarser feelings too are whilst less easy than the body, are still relatively easy to see how they appear and whether they exist in this way or not. However, that of consciousness, aggregate of consciousness, this is much more difficult to recognize how it appears and therefore to be able to investigate whether it exists in the way that it appears or not. But to be able to do so is of great importance.
Deyang so da number sheba ne chewi mi gyumchen karasen deyang jir semki kunzubgi nelu kyang ngoche kashingas. Jesa jidane tenga su ta semchene su digede nga ngoche la lela kunzube ngoche le ra bachi rede dinane dang semdi ngoche le kale khayo reser jir semki kunzube ne gapso da dwanna ba tongbo la samata ba ne jidang zo kunzube ne gapsam da na semne su da semna labna su di ngoche le la wa ka son ton re ga yo ba and dinane chowa digen da dinane semdi ngoche le kale khabores kale khawa ngo so ya la ngoche kale khawa res dinza number shibe tendo dan komya de ge chimore se de dure do jida sem khorong ngo so ya de kale khawa res ka shin se.
And this general point that it's easier to recognize and therefore analyze the body than it is the mind is continued in the final bullet point. Further, it is generally difficult to identify even the conventional way the mind abides. So here, His Holiness is taking it to a deeper level, because it's just been pointed out that it's greatly important to analyze consciousness, but to recognize how consciousness appears to the mind is much more difficult than the other aggregates. And then he continues to state that it in general is difficult to identify even the conventional way the mind abides. So when one isn't even thinking about emptiness, but just to recognize the conventional way the mind abides.
Serik zam sede ngo chene jina sem sede du ska kan jim ju che de kala sem sede ngo sa xin rik zam ji le sem na go re xe ngo horong sa xin an yu de rik zam ji le ya an sem na go re di ma zo ngo dang bo ngo chho go re se di ngo chho re se de ne ngo chene sede di sig do sem ji kun zo bi ngo ser rik zam ngo chene sede. Mo chene se di ba da sem ji kunzu bi ngo sem se de kunzu bi sem se de ngo kan shi se ngo de sa xin rik sam chi es di ha go re sem se de shi de ngo rik sam chi ma da shen ga min do sem bi da ngo sa xin rik sam de le sem la go re se di sem le ya ngo chho go re se.
Once the conventional nature of the mind, the mere clear knower has been identified. So the conventional nature of the mind then is its clarity and that it knows its object. This is the conventional nature of the mind and needs to be known. So again, the conventional nature of the mind, or the entity of the mind, is its clarity and that it knows objects. Once one comes to recognize the conventional nature of the mind, then one is ready to analyze its nature. So therefore, it goes a little further. At the sentence, once the conventional nature of the mind, the mere clear knower, has been identified, then through analyzing its nature. So this then will be the second step, now to come to analyze its nature.
Semgi donna be ngo chene jesa ngo chena se de ne da du che de sem se du che ba che o sem dia gang lai ma de rang ngo ne drup de gen de ne ngo sa sam rik sam de da shi pa che ba che gang lai rang ngo ne drup ba me ba dong sang chi mo che ge de dong sang tong gu le je ro da donna be ngo che ba le.
Once the conventional nature of the mind, the mere clear knower, has been identified, then through analyzing its nature, finally you'll gradually be able to identify the ultimate nature of the mind. In other words, the pure empty state of the mind, the emptiness of the mind.
How go at it, same ranching marba, how go at it, same deniga, how go at it, must never say your essay, never sim situation I meet our chimbo use, never chimbo your essay.
If that is done, there is tremendous progress like anything else, unlike anything else. Here, a particular sequence has been laid out, but first one comes to recognize how the I appears, and then investigates, seeking to see if it exists in this way or not. Having gained familiarity with that, one investigates the aggregates. In particular, firstly, the first four aggregates in general, and then the aggregate of consciousness in particular. And when it comes to the aggregate of consciousness, trying to first recognize its conventional entity, and thereafter the emptiness of the mind, its ultimate way of abiding. And when one does so, as we see here, if that is done, there is tremendous progress, unlike anything else. And anything else refers to these preceding steps.
Tadu chebaji sem korong ngoyosune sem korong ngoyosun sem korong rashi maduba du chebaji sem korong rashi maduba to rugo da gaji le to rugo tadi lodi tongyi to lodi da nyuba chishor cha ko re sem korong ge deji an ju suk rashi madu to ba de suk di yu de suk de ja de rashi maduba se de to kan lo cha da ji to koni dirwa yu da yu che da de korong sem korong le number cheba korong le ya chebaji korong ganish du se chebaji number cheba korong ro wa Korongi Koro Chebachidu, Koron Rashin to Tonsan Tordu, Deniki Tonyu to be Ulode Tang, Tongbani body, or Yerme Chudan, Chulia, Chuluban, Tetan, or Yerme again, Sem Korongi Rashi, Korongi Tombai Tobaisa, that Deniki Lodi, that Tongmani to Lodi, that Nubal Mason Chisho the edge, the Jazadang to Nyomoba, Diva Pambala, Deniki Tombani to Lodi, Comche Pangu, yes, Mado, did Semgi Rashin, Korongi, Korotombai, Matobaina, Suk Rashin Mabatoba Semgi, did Tinsin Pantu Mevada, the Pantu May, said. semgi ranshin kor semgi ranshin demba matuba ma to ba ina suk demba matuba to ba ina ya ta semgi ranshin ma demba matuba to na su tian to ba ni ga zhe gong ba ne ta nyu mo ba bang tu ya de din sin ba cha da je bang tu ya de ga le ka bo bang tu me ba ra ta de bang tu ya la semgi dong yu to lo cha shuo de gu gu de lo cha shuo de ga le na semgi ranshin ko semgi korong sem korong ga ranshin ba do dong ba yu to lo korong ta lo cha shuo de de ji zan di da situation that middle was in new church did his at this one. Yeah. Didn't understand the good toilet, Jidan, good dancing in Portugal, the same Ranshi Matumatobana, da Ranshi Marato, with touch of a door to go, Matagaji, da Ranshi Matubat, Buddha, which you talk about the door to Mevenda. Same Koranshi Matumatobana, Garson da, said Pa, they do Tame Tauchi, Tar Duxa, the da said, Na said Taxadi, da Beshidi, same Zora, same Tabata Gorwa. Just a same Della Tashi, da the Ranshi Matobal, semi Ranshi Matubat Matobana. Jina gansa ke ta me ba se ya ho ko to be de pu da ho to tu me se da ga je le da di ti su do wo da de sem ge ran shin do wo da jo lam do wo da dong ni do ba la pa se sem ge ran shin de mo do ho dong ni do na digo
The reason for this graduated sequence from object, starting with the self, the selflessness of persons to the selflessness of phenomena, then to come to look at the mind. This sequence of object represents a progression from a coarser object to a subtler object. The mind, and of these objects, recognizing the empty nature of the mind is an extremely subtle object. So one doesn't want to say that realizing emptiness in relation to the self or the aggregates is easy or is not an incredible achievement. But realizing the empty nature of the mind, this is a particularly subtle object, and therefore one progresses towards realizing the empty nature of the mind. And when one realizes the empty nature of the mind, that realization of the emptiness of the inherent existence of the mind, that realizing mind of emptiness is of incredible power. And this is where one hears about when one realizes that the mind that realizes the empty nature of the mind is like water being poured into water. And this quality of realizing mind realizing emptiness, is the quality of mind that is required to actually abandon the afflictions together with their seeds. So this then we can unpack a little further. Without realizing the empty nature of the mind, but realizing the empty nature of other phenomena such as form, one cannot abandon the afflictions together with their seeds. One needs this incredibly subtle mind that is realizing the emptiness of incredibly subtle object, the mind itself. Only that mind has the power to abandon the afflictions together with their seeds. So therefore, when one is talking about gaining a direct realization of emptiness, one is referring to a direct realization of the emptiness of the nature of the mind. And in fact, when one's referring to an inferential realization of emptiness, the path of preparation, one here is also referring to the realization, the inferential realization of the empty nature of the mind. So, whilst there are of course preceding realizations of emptiness, such as the self and the aggregates, really what the yogin is striving for is to realize the empty nature of the mind. That is the quality of realization of emptiness that one should understand is being meant by the realization of emptiness.
sim number shibe tindo tomba ni ma to ba che para de le ni sunda dawa khashi yor besen phashi dine yesa mare kor jida toya di ngai tindo cheba chen tong yi to de le la ba che tindu cheba chen nga se cheba che tin de ji nga le cheba che ngai cheba che je phungbo gal cheba che or song song phungbo gal la cheba dine phungbo na ne number shi phungbo la cheba che or se de jida nga se de cheba che de nga rangshin ma tu ba se ba je dene phungbu na number she ba de je ba je jesa nga se de kawa ta go phungbu la ta go res phungbu di na ne number she phungbu la ta go jesa number she phungbu de ka de se je ba je de ndu che ba che de ta dang bo khor nga se rangshin ma tu ba to ne lamsa di che ya lamsa ani number she ba se de number she ba de ka ne tu je ba je lamsa number she ba rangshin ma to to se de ko ke ji karma chikchi madu meisa nga rangshin ma to chane dene to ba ina ta ke ji ni ban lamsa phungbo number she be den sam ta number she ba rangshin ma to to re se madu nga zumne nga rangshin ma to chaje den number she ba rangshin ma to ba ina ni chi karma khashi chuji khashi da ni ma khashi yo ne dene nga rangshin ma to number she phungbo dene ge yo sa ma re chi sa nga rangshin ma ba che ba che ne nga ta ba ngai den che ba che de ko je hom da jo hom che dene os kuoro matobeno kuoro os leyodu dene phungbo de phungbo na ne number shi phungbo de cheba jizada nga se de pa ta sa shi di zo de number shi phungbo jiza gewang a chi de capture de draw de number shi phungbo ru jiza nga la de la ta gu dene ge du cheba jine nga la ya cheba je de number shi ba ji je de dene nga ra shi ba de zao gi de mi do so tong sa je cheme nge ba ji ye yo du ndi lamsa ki jine de nga ta sa phungbo de kan de sam ta de 람사 디아 라싱을 싸워 있는 민도세 별 람사도 두 거래제래 제가 딩이 빨아들 균이 뭐야 말이제 다데디 도비 림바 담보 nga 라싱 마트바도 dine suyi phungpo rangshin matrupa to, dine suyi phungpo rangshin matrupa to, dine nambarshi phungpo rangshin matrupa to, dine rinpare, dine mare che. Ta tangpo nga zu gomdi kabla ngayi tendo gomu gore che, ngayi tendo kala kansam chik, lo nipa otli di, dine insarwa sampe, dine phungpe tendo gomu gore che, phungpa che gomna chogom che, niga che gore che. Du chino gomne da chik cheza phungpe tendo nga se daksa shidi phungpo di dai gore, phungpo di na nambarshi phungpo la dai gore, du samdan 두신다 간점 질려 곰 두시 곰여도 간점 질려 nga sa de rang원 싸워 기는 민두 선배 예배 체마 nga 라시 말 체마 예배 니요도 데 람사다 nga 따서 풍보드 넘버시 풍보드 간에 두 람들 라시 말로 람사 또 두고 그래시 디 두시 신부요 말해제 람사 또 두고 그래시 데 풍보드 넘버시 풍보드 곧 데네 풍보드 람사마도 디바라들 유니버스가요 말해제 제가 데네게 곧 ngazo nyamjal ma sonne denege ta dusu thungno chinalo ya i dangbo nga rashi mar de number shi rashi mar pashi denege insaro wada.
So there's a sequence we present as it's presented. There are three differing objects that one seeks to firstly see how they appear, and secondly whether they exist in the way they appear or not. The first being the I or the self, the second being the first four aggregates, and the third being the fifth aggregate, that of consciousness. So when one is engaging in meditation, so that's we understand should be quite clear. There are these three different objects, the second being the first four aggregates, so it's more objects there. When engaging in the meditation, one will start with the I, because this is easier to recognize, and engage in the alternating between analytical and placement meditation. In that meditation, to an extent one has a realization or an understanding of emptiness, one will progress in that meditation to the second object, the four individual aggregates, meditating on the form aggregate, engaging in the alternation between analytical and placement meditation, and then the same with the discrimination aggregate as well, and alternating between analytical and placement meditation. And then when one has on each of these, the first four aggregates, some recognition of the pure empty state, one then goes to the third object, that of consciousness. And again, same sequence as previous, but where one sees how the consciousness appears, and then seeking it out, and to whatever extent one comes to recognize that it is empty, one abides with that, and then when that the mind that's abiding loosens, one engages again in analytical, and then again placement. So what I'm conveying here that's new is that whilst there are these three groups of objects, one would engage or can engage in all three in the single meditative equipoise. And when one comes to gain a realization of emptiness with a valid cognition, in that meditative equipoise, one will gain it in relation to the ether object, that of the self. And one will here realize emptiness with a valid cognition. In that, and then, as one has been doing with all previous meditations, or many previous meditations, one will then move to the second group of objects, the first four aggregates, and come to realize very quickly that they too are empty, and one will realize so with a valid cognition. And then, still in the same meditative equipoise, go to the third object, that of the aggregate of consciousness, and will too quickly realize with a valid cognizer that it is empty of inherent existence. So therefore, what I'm saying in this segment is that one shouldn't think that there is an extensive period of time between realizing the emptiness of the self and the realizing the emptiness of the first four aggregates, and another extensive period of time before then one realizes the emptiness of the fifth aggregate of consciousness. These will be done within one meditative session. So we can conclude therefore this morning, but if there are questions, please ask.
I have a question about the first the sentence in the first bullet point. Because we've got quite a sequential sort of process here through all the bullet points, and it says in the third line, now I'm meditating on the view of emptiness. At that stage, I would not be thinking that. I would be thinking, now I'm meditating on the object to be refuted by emptiness. Because now I'm meditating on the view of emptiness will come much lower, like the third bullet point. Can that Geshe clarify that, please?
So when it says now meditating.
Now I'm
meditating on the view of emptiness. Shouldn't this be now I'm meditating on the
object to be refuted by emptiness?
The object to be refuted by emptiness.
제바 제일링이 동반이도 고무인 선배 삼는 땅 진딘 동반이 가는 세 제바 지고로 왔어. 이러와데 마데 동반이 고무게 준에 마삼는 동반이 제바 제가요 말. 제자디 미 동반이 고무 또 후도 제자 동반이 가는 또 고무인 선배 삼는 땅 제딘이 고무제 상요고 마 토고 제자 고무인 선배 동반이 가는 세스네. 다지 제바 제리고로.
What you say is correct. So the way to understand what has been written here is that now I'm meditating, so I can insert words, now I'm meditating on the presentation that is the view of emptiness, or the presentation of the view of emptiness. So that's not in the text, but that's so we understand this view of emptiness, meaning here, as in the topic that is being meditated on. So understand it in a more expansive way.
Yeah, so it is, now I'm sort of going through the stages to be able to meditate.
Yes, just like that.
That's
Okay.
topic.
Okay.
I do have another question about, I just think, just from my own point of view, and because Geshe was talking about the stages and relating it to Tantra, the paths and relating it to Tantra. I was just wondering on the 10th ground, where from the Mahayana grounds of Past Yoga Tantra, would the view being that everyone who gets to that subsequent attainment, moving on to the unobstructed path, they would at that stage be getting some teachings on Tantra if they haven't already had them, and then actually meditating on Tantra.
So is it correct that according to the Mahayana tenets, that in order to attain enlightenment one has to practice Tantra, and therefore if a practitioner hadn't been practicing Tantra, by the time they reach the 10th ground, they would have to be practicing Tantra there in order to attain the path of normal training?
Well, what I want to really ask is, from the view of the highest Yoga Tantra, I would be understanding that at that subsequent attainment, if you haven't gone by the highest Yoga Tantra, you would be getting teachings by an emanation of the Buddha or something in that subsequent attainment, and then able to do the uninterrupted path of Tantra.
Okay.
Lamni Jewores, Lami Gu Lami Gu Yamle Majaba, Dolu Kyangba, Yamle China San Yoko, two Mares, Juba Badu Mado, San Yoko, two Mares, Lami Gu Yamle Majena, Gudio Masu Yamle China, Sajuba Bodlig Mato, San Yoko, two San Yoko, Tobala, that Doyin Yamle China, Sajuba, Tomne Dene, Lami Gu Yamle Jewores, Gudio Masu Yamle Chebene, Sajuba Bodlig. Dene an lami gu nyamle chewar, lami gu nyamle majeba sanya kuma toya, yo maresen lami gu nana suntaan kura dene sungore. Da gyude oma sum nala ya koranzu sunda de di gyude oma lami gu le nyamle chewar, gyude oma nyamle chenda sanya kuma top tugure siwar. Dolo keshe de gu nyamle chewar, dolo le dene sanya kuma top tugure sin koran desen sungore. Da lami gu sunyo de da lami gu le nyamle majeba shendagi lam nyamle chenda sa juba bardu mato shendala sanya kuma top tugumare siya dire.
The brief answer is yes. The extensive answer will be, from the point of view of Sutra, one can progress through these 10 grounds and attain enlightenment. But from the point of view of highest Yoga Tantra, that is not possible. If a practitioner has attained the high path, the 10th ground, without practicing highest Yoga Tantra, that is completely achievable. However, at the 10th ground, whether they have achieved it through the paths of sutra or through the training in the highest yoga, the 3 lower tantras, they have to, in order to attain enlightenment at that point, on the 10th ground, practice highest yoga tantra. Yeah. So if they haven't and they're there, they will need to.
But they can get to the 10th ground.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you very much.